Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. Do you like my lighting? It's kind of fun, right? Thought we would do something a little bit different. This is the kind of lighting that YouTubers who refer to what they do as like movies. This is the lighting that they do. Like, ooh, I have two different colored lights on and they have different colored temperatures to just like me out of the background. Ooh. Like, you're not better than me. I'm not completely sure what my audience's perception of my athletic abilities is. I feel like it's vaguely that like I work out and I run. I don't know. If you want the details of that, you can follow me on Strava. No, seriously, you can. But you probably won't be completely surprised to learn that in terms of like team sports, I am not gifted like at all. The coordination of that type of activity and the patience to practice mechanically precise movements like that is just, it's never been particularly salient to me. Like, you can take me to batting practice, but about 10 pitches in, my mind is wandering to what else I could be doing right now, which means I'm also not hitting the ball because I'm not focused. And then I realize I'm just not having a good time. Like, I actually hate this. Like, this is not something I enjoy or find at all stimulating to practice. Like, I'm going to go do something more fun, like run. Okay. And running is basically torture. So I don't know what that says about me, but it's true. But that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy watching a game, which I very much do. And I actually get pretty annoyed when people are all sports ball. Like, do you enjoy it when people make little snide remarks about something you're doing that interests you? Why do people do this? Is it because you feel like you're punching up or something? Because you're not. You're being a wet blanket and kind of an asshole to your friends who don't call you out for it because they're being nice to you. Okay? People are allowed to discuss a topic even if it doesn't interest you. Don't interrupt. Rude. Anyway, I've got to say, over the course of the past 7 or so years, there's been something a little bit different about the broadcasts.
And let's take a look at our Bet 365 betting odds for you with Gavin Williams. Taking a look at the strikeouts today, the over-under there on 5.5. Gavin Williams, a different baseball. What's going on?
They need some baseballs. They need some rosin.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten used to seeing this shit in here. So you may have thought that watching sports was about the excitement of like cheering for your team or the camaraderie between you and the other fans, the joy when your team wins, the begrudging, dedicated affection when your team sucks. But no, it's not about any of that, okay? It's about gambling, okay? It's about money, because that's what makes things fun. Now, here in the United States, as with many issues, the legality of gambling is generally left up to the states to decide. Some states allow lotteries, some states allow commercial casinos, some states allow betting on horse racing, and that could be for any number of reasons. For example, lotteries are illegal in Utah because they're too much like gambling, and lotteries are illegal in Nevada because they're too much like gambling. See? Only 2 states have an actual fucking spine and have an absolute and complete ban on all gambling of any kind, and those are Hawaii and Utah. There's no lottery in Utah. There's nothing, which I think is how it should be. Whatever. Yeah. Hot take alert. I think lotteries should be illegal. And I've thought that ever since I lived in Massachusetts and learned that the Massachusetts lottery has a $30 scratch off ticket. There's no justification for a $30 scratch off ticket. Oh, but upon checking to make sure that that memory was real and not a fever dream, I learned that now the Massachusetts lottery has a $50 scratch off. You ever been stuck in line at the packy behind someone buying 14 scratchies, cashing out 3 of them for 2 nips and some loosies? Makes you not want to live on this planet anymore. Fucking nightmare. Sports betting was a little bit different though, because the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act at the federal level prohibited states from legalizing sports wagering beyond where it was already legal, meaning it was only legal in Nevada. This law was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2018 on the grounds that the Constitution doesn't allow the federal government to just tell states what laws they can and cannot pass. Basically, if the federal government wanted to pass and enforce a law making sports betting illegal, that would be allowable by the Constitution, and it would supersede any state laws legalizing it. But they can't just say, like, you have to have these laws to the states. Like, they can't force the state law to be a certain way. It's definitely one of those Supreme Court rulings where, despite my belief that the effects will be overwhelmingly negative, the decision of the court was definitely the right decision. And it's kind of surprising that the obvious constitutional issues didn't come up like a long time ago. The Constitution's pretty clear that that's not supposed to be a thing that the federal government can do. Can just tell the states that they can't pass certain laws. What followed was the legalization of sports betting in a surprising number of states in the coming years. The arguments for legalization are typically how much tax revenue it could bring in to cover a budget shortfall, because politicians will do basically anything if it means they don't have to raise taxes, because people hate taxes and also do not understand taxes. Seriously, people in Utah have on multiple occasions said something to me to the effect of, oh, you moved from California, at least your taxes will be lower, when actually I pay significantly more state income tax in Utah than California, because Utah has a flat tax rate, whereas California has a progressive tax rate. So you'd have to make at least like $100,000 a year to pay more taxes in California than you would in Utah. Or when people say that like they have less take home pay now because they got a raise and their taxes went up, when like, no, that's literally impossible because it's a marginal tax rate. If the line between two tax brackets is $70,000 and you earned $75,000, only $5,000 of your income is subject to the higher tax rate. So it's literally impossible for you to make less money. And they always throw around impressive sounding numbers like $1.1 billion in tax revenue for New York in 2024, which the total New York state budget in 2024 was $239 billion. So that's only 0.4% of the budget. It's pretty inconsequential, really. Ohio estimates that tax revenue from sports gambling for 2024 was $180 million. The state of Ohio has total revenue of $101 billion. So that's 0.2%. If that were on a pie chart, you wouldn't even be able to see the slice. Okay, of course, the gambling industry lobbyists don't ever share it as an amount relative to the state budget. They just say like 1.1 billion in tax revenue because like that sounds more impressive. My question ultimately becomes, yeah, you want to work it, but is it worth it? Is covering less than 0.5% of the budget worth the consequences? My answer is no. By the time 2018 ended, sports betting was legal in 8 states. At the end of 2019, that was up to 14 states. In 2020, it was up to 19. Then 28 by the end of 2021. At time of writing, it's up to 35 states. So this all happened very quickly. But that's not the real problem here, because those are the number of states allowing physical in-person sports betting, like at a casino. And while I would find that to be a concerning trend that could be harmful to both public well-being and the integrity of sports, it's not the big issue here. The real issue is when states started legalizing sports betting on mobile and online. Only 3 states allowed it at the beginning of 2019, but by the end, that was up to 9. And by the end of 2021, it was 20. And by the end of 2023, it was up to 30 states. Currently, we're at 32 states allowing mobile wagering. Because, you know, it's clearly the same when it's not. So, all in all, we've got 39 states and DC allowing sports betting in some form, which covers about 2/3 of the US population. at the time of recording in August 2025. California and Texas have not legalized it. So that's why it might seem like a smaller share of the total population than you would expect given the number of states. And it is a public health emergency. The numbers are staggering. Let's start by looking at the financial numbers overall. First, we're going to need to define some terms. The handle refers to the total amount of money wagered by bettors. Revenue refers to the amount of money the sportsbook retains from the handle after paying out winners. So, for example, in 2018, the total handle for sportsbooks in the US was $1.4 billion with a revenue of $98 million. In 2019, that went up to $7.5 billion, yielding a revenue of $900 million, a year when mobile betting was only allowed in 9 states. In 2020, that had increased to $16.5 billion, with $1.5 billion in revenue. In 2021, it had shot up to $48.1 billion, with $2.8 billion in revenue. In 2022, it was up to a handle of $83 billion with $5.7 billion in revenue. 2023 saw a handle of $103 billion for $9 billion in revenue. 2024, the last year that we have complete totals for, saw a handle of an astonishing $149.6 billion with $11.8 billion in revenue. For January to May of 2025, the total handle is sitting at $59.8 billion compared to $58 billion for the same period in 2024. Yeah. It's not like that money is coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of people's pockets. And about 94% of the wagers were made on mobile or online. Only 6% was at a brick-and-mortar casino or sports book. And let's establish some more issue. Let's define the problem here too. Okay, gambling in any commercial format or location, whether it's a casino in Vegas, an app on your phone, a state lottery, or a loot box from a video game, already has so many inherently noxious aspects that weaponize the exploitable psychological weaknesses we all have, although the susceptibility varies widely. For one, probability is a concept that the human brain has virtually no ability to grapple with at an intuitive level, to the degree that even if you know the actual probability of something and what it means, that understanding will always be shouting over the noise of your intuition's mumbling, that doesn't feel true. Like, when you shuffle a standard deck of cards, that sequence of cards you create has almost certainly never existed before, because the number of possible sequences of cards is 52 factorial, or 8 times 10 to the 67th power. 8 with 67 zeros after it. Factorial means 52 times 51 times 50 times 49 and so on. And it's used because the chance of picking, the King of Hearts out of the deck is 1 in 52. And then if you pick a second card, the chance of picking the Ace of Clubs, for example, is 1 in 51 because there are only 51 cards left to choose from. And then for my third card, the chance of picking the Two of Hearts is musically dependent on being in the mood for 80s dance. And mathematically, 1 in 50. The age of the universe in seconds is about 4.3 times 10 to the 17th, okay? Like, if cards were shuffled every second starting at the Big Bang, the percentage of all possible sequences of cards you've seen is still basically 0. for all intents and purposes, 4.3 times 10 to the 17th out of 8 times 10 to the 67th means you have not even started. Even if Earth with 8 billion people had existed at the moment of the Big Bang and all of them were shuffling 1 million decks of cards every second from the Big Bang until now, you basically haven't started. Even if you added 1 billion more Earths with 8 billion people, each shuffling 1 million decks of cards every second for 14 billion years, you still have not started. The highest possible percentage of all possible combinations that will have been seen is 0 decimal point, then 24 zeros, 441%. Okay, and like, I know that a factorial is how you calculate the number of permutations. I know that there are 52 distinct objects in a deck of cards, and I know that 52 factorial is 8 times 10 to the 67th power. Yet, when I hear that every time a deck of cards is shuffled, this sequence has almost certainly never existed before, the intuitive part of my brain stubbornly goes, I don't know. That doesn't feel true. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of decks of cards on Earth and they get shuffled a lot. Like, even though I just explained how that doesn't matter because, like, it's insignificant. Nope. My brain is still like, I don't know. Because the human brain is just, it's just not very good at grappling with that on a intuitive level. Our intuitions are so bad at grasping probability. These poor understandings are able to be exploited. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this because it's blindingly obvious, but legalizing sports betting on mobile devices is not the same as legalizing brick-and-mortar sports books. The difference is so large that it is absolutely insane to me that they're even treated like related concepts. I mean, without even looking at the data, there should be multiple concerns that immediately come to mind with mobile sports betting. And I'm sure you can think of some right away, like immediacy. You know, instead of having to travel to a second location, which takes time, during which you might reconsider a rash decision, you know, instead you can just place a bet the instant the impulse strikes you. Great. A lack of socialization. It's something that you can very easily do without anybody knowing what you're doing. Okay, even if they're standing right there in the same room. There's the availability of it. You can do it from any time, anywhere in a legal state, including at work or any other number of inappropriate places to be placing bets. Okay, all of those should be pretty obvious, okay? So there's I don't think there's any research that needs to be done to know that those are problems. But on top of that, there are some more complex problems that we'll need to dissect more thoroughly. First, there's apparently a widespread delusion that you can make money sports betting. And in case anyone watching this believes that you can, no, you can't. And of course, there's a virtually unlimited supply of grifters who will try to sell you their picks or their course or their strategies or any number of things that they claim will help you beat the sports books and make tons of money just by betting. Okay, and in case anyone watching this is considering buying or subscribing to any of these products, somebody who knows a guaranteed way to make thousands or millions of dollars is not going to be wasting their time telling you how to do it. They're going to be off doing that, whatever it is. They're not going to tell you how to do it. Why? Seriously, think about it, okay? Imagine that you have developed some system, and by using it, you are making like $250,000 a year in profit by sports betting, okay? Are you then going to spend hours and hours and hours creating videos or other course content, not to mention the time and money required to advertise it? No. Of course you're not going to do that because that's a waste of time. It doesn't make any sense for you to spend your time doing that because not only will it put your own sports betting profits at risk if too many other people figure out how to do the same thing, but you also are losing time that could have been spent using your system and making more money. Furthermore, even if you had a crystal ball that accurately predicted the outcome of every game, you still couldn't make money with online sports betting, okay? Because sportsbooks will limit or ban anyone who is long-term making a profit. Yes, they can do that, and why wouldn't they? Why would they keep letting somebody bet that is losing them money? Of course they're going to prevent you from wagering any significant amount. It's just like physical casinos with card counters. They will kick you out if you are successfully card counting at the blackjack tables. Is it illegal to count cards? No. Do they have to let anyone keep playing? No, they don't. So they're going to kick you out because you are losing them money. The house always wins. So unless you're actually participating in this sports betting thing or someone you know is, you might not realize the degree to which today's sports betting industry is pretty different from before. The rise of mobile betting has come with the rise of a couple of new types of bets. The first is the same game parlay. A parlay bet is where multiple predictions, called legs, are made and combined into a single bet. All the predictions have to be correct to win. A same game parlay is precisely what it sounds like on the tin. It's multiple predictions about the outcomes of a single game combined into one bet. Like that a baseball team will win by 2, have exactly 1 home run, and the shortstop will have 1 base hit. So what's the problem with this? Well, the return on conventional sports bets for the sportsbook averages 5.5%, as in when you average out all the conventional bets they take in, 94.5% of it goes back to the bettors and 5.5% goes to the sportsbook. This is actually similar to slot machines, which usually pay back 90 to 98% of the money that is put into them. Does that seem higher than what you'd expect? Yeah, it almost sounds generous, really, but a 93% payback percentage means that for every $100 put into the machine keeps $7. The house keeps $7, okay? And $93 is paid back. And if I know anything about slots players, that $93 is going to be going back into the machine, and $86.49 is going to come back, and so on and so forth. And this is how the house edge works. And of course, this, 93% doesn't actually happen that way every time. It's just over time, it eventually has a payback percentage of 93%. The house always wins. If you've been in a casino since like the early 90s, you know that casinos fucking love slot machines and their 2 to 10% house edge. They love it. Love slot machines. That's why more and more of the gaming floors are being taken up by slot machines. Well, these online sports books love parlay bets for the same reason, except that reason is even more compelling for them than the reason is for casinos and slot machines, okay? Because there is a house edge that is an average of 31% on parlay bets. The house edge on a slot machine is 2 to 10%. Now factor in the endless possible combinations of wagers that could be turned into a parlay and then, maybe suggested to bettors via the app. The probability of a successful parlay is always very low. Since every leg has to succeed, so the probabilities get multiplied. Even if every leg of your parlay has a 75% chance of happening, that's still only a 42% chance of a successful parlay bet for 3 events. If it's 4 events, it's only 32%. And if it's 5 events, it's only 24%. And most probabilities in sports are nowhere near 75%. But you're not thinking about 42, 32, or 24%, are you? You're thinking about 75% and how each leg sure seems like a surefire bet. Because we can't grasp probability intuitively. We just can't. It's not in our wheelhouse. Just to make it a little bit clearer, I'm showing what the probability of a successful parlay is if each leg has a given probability individually. And we're just going to assume that each leg of the parlay has the same probability because that's just easier to show and easier to calculate. So, for example, if you're betting on a 2-leg parlay, so you just have like 2 different events and each event has 75% chance of happening, the probability of the parlay being successful is 56%. And if it's a 3-leg parlay, it's 42%. And if it's a 4-leg parlay, it's 32%. And if it's a 5-leg parlay, then it's a 24%. So if each leg has a 50% chance of happening, then the probability of the parlay being successful would be 25% for a 2-leg parlay. It'd be 13% for a 3-leg parlay. For 4 legs, it'd be only 6.3%. And for 5 legs, it would be only 3%. And that's with each leg having a probability of 50%. So you can see how it really drops off there. And then it's even worse if it's only 25%. And bear in mind, that's a 1 in 4 chance for each leg individually. So it's like this is a fairly good chance of the event happening. But the problem is when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 of these things that have to happen, 25% becomes not a lot, because even with a 2-leg parlay on that, it's only a 6.3% chance. With a 3-leg parlay on that, it's only 1.6%. 4 legs, it's less than 1% chance. 5%. And with 5, it's only a 0.1% chance. And forget about it with 10% chance on each leg. Bottom table here shows how many times you would expect to have to place that bet in order for it to be successful one. So for a 2-leg parlay with a 10% chance, you would expect it to be unsuccessful 100 times more often than it would be successful. For a 3-leg parlay with a 10% chance, you would expect it to be unsuccessful 1,000 times for each time that it was successful. So when a bet is successful, the amount the winner is paid depends on what the odds were. Basically, the odds are how the sportsbook compensates for the likelihood of the event happening. If you bet on a team that is strongly favored to win, you will win a much smaller amount of money than you would if you had bet on the underdog and they managed to pull off an upset. Because the probabilities get lower and lower the more legs are added to a parlay, the potential winnings get enticingly high on a relatively small bet, while the seemingly high probability of each individual leg makes success seem far more likely than it is. The nature of a parlay also makes it likely that the bettor will have most of the legs succeed, creating the illusion of a near miss, which entices them to place further bets because they were so close they got 4 out of 5 after all. Even though 4 out of 5 is actually a relatively high probability outcome, okay? Because near misses don't exist, and the previous bet has 0 implications for your next one. And there are also a lot of possible combinations that could get you 3 out of 5. but there's only one combination that gets you 5 out of 5. Thanks to these psychological properties and the relentless recommendation of them in the sports betting apps, parlays now account for 60% of the bets placed in Illinois, which is the only state that provides statistics that granular. I mean, of course the sports books are going to suggest them. They have a 31% house edge. That's 6 times the house edge that they have on other bets, and it's over 3 times the house edge that they have from slot machines at casinos. Like, if you and the sports book both seem to like the same type of bet, that's your red flag, because your interests are adversarial. Like, get that through your head. If there's something they're trying to advertise to you, you should probably not do it. Anyway, that's all impressively diabolical, but the online sports books are continually striving to sink even lower than was previously thought possible. And so they've introduced live betting, where you can glue yourself to your phone while watching the game, completely oblivious to your friends or family around you, to enhance the excitement and fun by taking split-second decisions to place crack-brained wagers on completely asinine outcomes, like which team will score next, which team will have the next foul in basketball, whether the next free throw attempt will be successful, and so on, with a continuous stream of new bets coming as the game proceeds. This is making use of the same flow state that makes modern slot machines so addictive and effective. The continuous bets and rhythm in play have a quasi-hypnotic effect, causing susceptible players to enter into a trance-like state with tunnel vision on the machine and little awareness of anything else happening around them. The time pressure and also the relatively quick results reveal and the endless stream effect of these potential bets encourages hasty decision making, and it also facilitates the destructive tendency to chase losses, where a bettor tries to make up for a loss by making it back on another bet. I realize that may not sound like fun, but the sports books assure me that it, in fact, is fun. It is fun, okay? That's fun. If you are chasing your losses, you have a gambling problem. The final insidious aspect that I think most people don't think about, or they vastly underestimate the size and power of, is the continuous tracking and algorithmic and AI analysis of users' personal data for the purpose of targeted marketing and betting suggestions. Like most apps, sportsbooks log every action their users take. Hundreds of attributes are compiled into a profile on every user and analyzed, such as how frequently they gamble, how often they take advantage of free bet promotions, what sports they bet on, how frequently they open emails, details of how the user responds to ads, patterns of deposits, time of day they usually bet, and tons of other pieces of information. The machine learning and AI analysis of this data helps identify problematic gamblers and target them with personalized ads and push notifications, including things like how much promotional credit would need to be offered to reactivate them if they're inactivated, products they're likely to use, and when offers and recommendations should be made so as to further increase spending. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins explained on a 2022 earnings call, quote, "There's a lot of data science and customization at a player level to serve up parlays, same game parlays to the customers that we think have the proclivity to engage with that type of bet." Proclivity. The industry refers to these problem gamblers as whales. In fact, half the revenue brought in by sportsbooks comes from just 2.6% of the bettors in a recent analysis. All of this results in online sports betting being far more dangerous than other forms of gambling. But how bad has it really gotten by the numbers? You don't want to know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Let's start with some alarming behaviors. Well, okay, the advertising has certainly been effective, particularly on younger age groups. An NCAA survey of 18 to 22-year-olds found that 58% had placed a sports wager in the past year, a statistic that nearly caused me to faint the first time I read it, because holy shit, that is bananas. But Luckily, I was able to sit down before I read the following sentence, which reported that the number was 70% for just college students 18 to 22. What? That's insane to me. That is insane. When I was in college, nobody was betting on sports. Okay? I went to USC. It was just a drive to Vegas. Okay? Come on. What the fuck? And online sports betting seems to be uniquely dangerous in how it encourages problematic behaviors that could lead to gambling disorder or addiction. The National Council on Problem Gambling found in 2024 that online sports bettors were over twice as likely as other gamblers to exhibit at least one of the DSM signs of gambling disorder. Yet not twice as likely as the general population, twice as likely as other gamblers. A 2025 Siena College Research Institute study involving over 3,000 participants, of which 500 were sports bettors, found that of the sports bettors specifically, 86% believed they could make money sports betting, up from 80% in the same study in 2024, including 90% of the 18 to 34-year-olds. So I don't know if they're just doing it for entertainment. 74% said that they signed up for a sportsbook because of a promotion that offered free bets. 83% said they like betting on parlays. 52% reported chasing their losses at least once. Among the 18 to 34-year-olds, it was 58%. For males of all ages, it was 57%. I cannot stress the significance of that enough, okay? That is one of the strongest signs of a gambling problem. If this were alcohol, that would be blacking out, basically. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're addicted, but it absolutely means that you do not have a healthy relationship with this thing. Because normies don't do this, okay? And not only do they not do this, it is not difficult for them to not do this. All right, so you clearly there's something you got to be more careful with it because clearly there's something different about you, okay? Just keep that in mind. 56% admitted to having wagered at least $100 in a single day. 24% admitted to having wagered at least $500 in a single day. 23% reported that someone had expressed concern to them about their usage of online sports books. That's like a quarter. That's like 1 in 4. Like, that's got to be pretty bad if they're having that uncomfortable conversation. Okay. And that was 29% among 18 to 34-year-olds. 20% admitted that they've lied to someone about the extent of their betting. 37% reported that they've bet more than they felt that they should before. That was 43% among 18 to 34-year-olds. 20% said they'd ever lost an amount of money that meant they would not be able to meet their financial obligations. That is 1 in 5. And that was 26% among 18 to 34-year-olds. Among everybody in the study, not just the bettors, 16% reported knowing someone with an online sports betting problem. That was 26% among 18 to 34-year-olds. 65% of respondents said that they believed online sports betting will create compulsive gamblers that cause pain to them and their families. Only 34% felt that the sportsbooks did enough to respond to compulsive gambling. A 46% plurality said online sportsbooks should not be allowed to advertise during sporting events on TV, while 38% said they should be allowed and 16% were unsure. On the financial side, we're already seeing alarming signs of the harm being done. A 2024 study conducted as a collaboration between researchers at USC and UCLA analyzed the anonymized credit files of a nationally representative 2% sample of US adults. That's over 4.3 million profiles by looking at how various indicators changed over time in states that legalized sports betting and compared them to states that did not have legal sports betting. Note that this is looking generally at the population. It's not looking specifically at gamblers or anything. The researchers found that average credit scores had a statistically significant 0.3% decrease in the 16 quarters following legalization. And states that allowed online sports betting saw average credit scores drop by over 1%. If that sounds small, remember, we're looking at average credit scores for the whole population, not just those who gamble. And the result was statistically significant. That means that this trend was very unlikely to have happened just by chance. In states that legalized online sports betting, bankruptcy filings increased by over 25% in the period following legalization. Balances in collections increased by 8%. Auto loan delinquency increased by 9%. Debt consolidation loans increased by 10%. The ratio of secured loans to unsecured loans, meaning where you have to place collateral, increased by 3.6%, suggesting tighter restrictions on credit due to decreasing creditworthiness. Average credit limits decreased by 1.6% in all states legalizing sports betting and by 2.7% in states that legalized online sports betting. Again, none of this was looking specifically at bettors. It was population-wide, looking at pre-legalization versus post-legalization, and validated by using the states where it is illegal as controls. An analysis of search engine traffic published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine in February of 2025 found that queries for gambling addiction were 22% higher than expected in 2022, 25% higher than expected in 2023, and 31% higher than expected in the first half of 2024, the latest period for which data was available for analysis. Ohio's problem gambling hotline saw a 70% increase in call volume in the 10 months following legalization of sports betting. Trigger warning for discussion of self-harm. Among people with gambling disorder, it is estimated that about half will consider killing themselves. Around 1 in 5 people with a gambling disorder attempt to kill themselves. That is over 21 times the rate of the general population. And data suggests that online sports betting is far more insidious than other forms of gambling. The legislation allowing sports betting in New Jersey stipulates that an annual study must be conducted to monitor the relationship between betting and gambling disorders. And the 2023 edition found that, and pay attention to my wording here, 1 in 7 sports bettors have thought about killing themselves, and 1 in 10 sports bettors have attempted to kill themselves, 10 times the rate of the general population. Not problem sports bettors or addicted sports bettors. I just said sports bettors. So there's more than just money at stake here, and it's not just the gambler who is harmed by it. The final huge negative effect of sports betting that I want to talk about is how it is going to harm sports culture overall. Gamblers are already incredibly quick to jump to the conclusion that a game must have been rigged, even if there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever. So, what is going to happen when, inevitably, a scandal where a game was actually rigged gets exposed? It will be catastrophic. Nobody is going to trust that any games are actually being played after that. And nobody is going to watch a game that they think has been rigged. So, what do we do about this? Isn't it obvious? I don't know. But I have some ideas for where to start. First of all, some of the naivete displayed in some of the research publications I read for this video is just quaint. They'll be like, sports books could use the data they collect to identify problem gamblers and prevent them from making deposits. And it's like, they can and do use that data to identify problem gamblers, but it's so that they can target them with promotions, offers, notifications, and personalized suggested parlays and live bets. Sportsbooks are never going to proactively identify and stop problem gamblers because that is completely antithetical to their business plan. Okay, if I snapped my fingers and cured every problem gambler instantly, every sportsbook and casino would go out of business immediately. That's just how it works. That's just the reality of it. These businesses cannot survive without problem gamblers. For example, in 2023, New York's Gaming Commission proposed a rule that stated, quote, "A casino sports wagering licensee, sports pool vendor, or affiliate marketing partner shall not use misleading embedded keywords or similar methods in its platform to attract persons under the wagering minimum age, self-excluded contestants, or persons who are or may be problem gamblers." Now, to people who aren't evil, that might sound like, cool, pretty reasonable, but FanDuel objected to this with a public comment stating, "The requirement is impractical to enforce and analogous to a liquor store not being able to advertise to customers who might be alcoholics." They might want to be more careful with that comparison, given that if an establishment sells alcohol to a customer who is obviously intoxicated, they can be held partially liable in the case of an accident that happens later. Furthermore, the suggestion that a liquor store's advertising being seen by potential alcoholics is even comparable to targeted personalized offers delivered as push notifications that can be instantly acted upon, delivered directly into the addict's pocket, is such a blatant display of disingenuous malignance that I don't think I need to really explain it farther, okay? But I will anyway. If it were possible for liquor stores to make alcohol instantly appear through your phone and they were sending personalized, specifically targeted notifications to alcoholics, I'm pretty sure we would object to that as well. FanDuel suggested that the language be changed to known problem gamblers. The commission rejected FanDuel's analogy and proposed changes, stating that website operators can use embedded keywords to optimize their positioning in internet search results and attract certain audiences. For example, a gambling site could embed a phrase such as "problem gambling help" in its website in order to attract a user who might then click through to a gambling website even though assistance for problem gambling had been sought. Restricting the rule to known problem gamblers would not address the issue appropriately. And I think the fact that the commission felt that it was important to have a rule against doing that speaks volumes about the ethics of the companies we are dealing with here. The sportsbooks are not going to do anything to help because it is in their interests to exacerbate it, and they fight tooth and nail against any regulation. FanDuel even objected to having to print disclaimers in the same font size as their deceptive promotions. So to suggest that they'd ever use the data they collect for any sort of beneficial end is ridiculous. They wouldn't collect that data in the first place if they knew that it would be used to prevent problem gamblers from using their service. Why would they retain data that would be used to harm their business interests? That would never happen. This is the type of rampant naivete that allows Exxon to get away with being committed to stopping climate change. Like we've got to be smarter, you guys. Come on. You can't keep falling for this shit. Okay, it's actually really frustrating how people can actually think that a company like FanDuel would not be aggressively targeting problem gamblers. Why wouldn't they? Listen, if the CEO of any publicly traded company were presented with a button that would make their stock price go up by 1 cent while killing a random family without anyone linking it to them, they would press it. They would press it thousands of times. They wouldn't even bat an eye. They would press it until the button stopped working. Guaranteed. Don't you ever assume that a company would never do something. If it is profitable and without consequence to them, they absolutely would. This is why, despite so many CVS locations having annual net profits net profits of well over $1 million. And yes, that is after subtracting out all expenses, including payroll, rent, utilities, costs of goods. Okay. They just can't seem to do anything to curb the rampant medication errors attributable to wildly inadequate staffing levels and outrageous workloads and metric expectations. 4 of their pharmacists in Pennsylvania have killed themselves in 2025, notably in regions with many former Rite Aid locations that closed and transferred all their customers and prescriptions to already overloaded and severely understaffed CVS locations. And do you think CVS did anything about it? No, they didn't. Okay, they just don't have the money, you guys. Annual net profit over $1 million at these locations, but they can't afford just one more tech, because then they would only have a net profit of over $958,000 at that location. They just say there's no money, they'll go out of business, and people will accept it. I think currently the best we can do is raise awareness of how serious this problem is and how urgent the need for tighter regulations on these platforms is. Because unfortunately, I think the genie is out of the bottle and it's too late for it to go back now. The leagues and state governments are now dependent on the cash being vacuumed out of addicts' pockets, and there's a whole industry now built around it. In order to have a hope of ever succeeding, you have to know how their talking points work and how to refute them. So let's summarize this video by going through those talking points, and we'll talk about why they're bullshit. Bullshit point number 1, the tax revenue is needed. The tax revenue that comes in is ultimately a trivial amount compared to the overall budget of a state. And the harm done to public health and financial stability is not without costs. Bullshit point number 2. Without legal sports books, the money would be going to illegal operators. Yeah, well, illegal operators don't flood every sports broadcast with commercials and trashy overlays to attract new bettors with promotional offers, or send predatory push notifications and personalized suggestions, or offer and promote new forms of betting engineered to be as addictive as possible, such as same-game parlays and live betting. It is completely disingenuous to pretend the scale of the illegal betting market is even comparable to that of the legal market. The aggressive and invasive marketing of the legal market greatly expands the size of the population at risk of harm. Okay, this is why we don't have a legal market for recreational fentanyl, okay? Number 3, it's no more addictive than anything else on your phone. Okay, first of all, that's just factually wrong. Gambling is more addictive, and that's been proven, okay? Your worst doom-scrolling marathons still pale in comparison to your average slots player. And out of all forms of gambling, mobile sports betting appears to be one of the most addictive. Second of all, even if it were no more addictive, it is much more harmful, okay? It's a lot easier to lose your rent money for next month with the FanDuel app open than with TikTok. It's probably still possible, but I'm gonna guess it's a hell of a lot less common. Thirdly, saying something isn't worse than anything else on your phone that you waste time on is not really selling me on its benign nature. Number 4, it's just entertainment. Nobody's hoping to win money. As we saw in the Siena College study and numerous others, most bettors would disagree. Number 5, it's your choice to gamble. Okay, well, it's also your choice to use fentanyl, but we don't have TV commercials for it and have legal recreational fentanyl sales, okay? There are products where, yes, nobody forces you to use them and it's your choice to do so, but that doesn't tell the whole story when we're talking about an extremely addictive product. Number 6, it's a stupid tax. That's a really noxious attitude that seems to reject the disease model of addiction. But even in an alternate universe where gambling addiction was simply the result of stupidity, it would still be pretty evil to take advantage of people just because they're stupid. Number 7, sports betting is saving sports by reversing declining viewership trends. Okay, first, pro sports were not in need of saving. Okay, there might have been dips in viewership, but the major pro sports were not in any imminent danger, and a lot of those trends were and still are the result of fewer and fewer households having cable television, which continues to have a firm chokehold on sports broadcasting and tends to make it really difficult to watch a game without a cable package. Second, if pro sports were unable to survive without introducing sports betting, then the heart and soul of it probably already died anyway, and it wasn't worth saving to begin with. But that's not true. Third, if anything, sports betting puts pro sports in a far more precarious position, with the trust of the fans standing on wafer-thin ice that cracks and creaks every time something unusual ends up being decisive in a game's outcome, and bettors cry about it being rigged. We're already seeing it in Major League Baseball, and the allegations being thrown around now are likely just the tip of the iceberg. Corruption is inevitable when hundreds of billions of dollars are flowing through an industry. Number 8. Sports betting is an ages-old practice. Okay, first of all, I don't think you need to just give something a free pass just because you've done it for a long time. And second of all, online sports betting is a fundamentally different activity from the historical brick-and-mortar sports book. There's a reason 94% of sports betting now happens online. And if you're saying, well, that's because it's more convenient. Yeah, that's exactly it. The convenience of it makes it far more dangerous than before. That's the point. That's the problem. It could also be a good jumping off point for raising awareness about the types of data collected about you as you use your devices and the powerful and frighteningly precise predictions it can make about you when aggregated and analyzed. It seems that most people are still largely clueless about this. You still see people that are convinced their phone has to be listening to them and their conversations or whatever. And I'm not saying your phone isn't listening to you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But what I am saying is that it did not need to listen to your conversations in order to make the predictions that you're listing. On Reddit, this musician was like, I can perform an obscure song from the 70s and then YouTube will have that song in my recommendations. It has to be listening. And I'm like, so to learn the song, were you listening to it on a record or a cassette tape or a CD? No, they were listening to it on Spotify. Okay. Did you work out how to play the song yourself? No, they used a tab on Ultimate Guitar. Okay, bro, that's just third-party cookies. Didn't need to listen to you. Likewise, maybe, you search gambling addiction or how to know if you have a gambling problem on Google, and your phone quietly adds that search record to its profile about you, and FanDuel pays to serve you a targeted push notification with a seemingly generous promotional $20 free bet because you might be a problem gambler, and therefore you are a very valuable customer to attract. Or perhaps using data provided to a data broker by JPMorgan Chase, DraftKings targets you with a push and at a higher dollar amount than it usually would on the day that your paycheck arrives in your bank account. After all, they wouldn't want to wait around and risk you spending that money on rent or something stupid like that, would they? Do you think they wouldn't do these things? Why wouldn't they? They can, and they will, and they do. And that should be core to the regulation placed on sports betting. I mean, we also desperately need overall privacy legislation, but that's probably a different video entirely. Let me know if you want to see that. Because I really think people are just very ignorant about that. Yeah. I wish I had better answers for this, but I don't. So, yeah. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye!
Liar, liar, bullshit supplier, plundered words, counterfeit dreams you sell.